Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Donna Fiesel, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge television talk show, where truth matters. Thank you so much for watching every day, Monday through Friday, beginning at 2 p.m. on the Eastern Time Zone, as I get to ride home with you in the afternoon. And I always say I get to ride home with you. It's a highlight of my day. Speaking of highlights, continue sending emails, Donna@donnasedge.com. That's Donna@donnasedge.com, where I get to hear from you. And I'm going to tell you, you guys loved Michael. But before we get to Michael, let's go ahead and mention the other ways you can find us. You can find us syndicated on Abundant Television, found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. You can also find the podcast on thenewscasters.com. All the other social media ways you can find us as well. Continue on to facebook.com/D Fiesel. A lot of you still continue to watch us that way. We definitely appreciate that as well. YouTube, got a YouTube channel, everything. And X and we all of it, but social media, we're into it. But again, thank you so much for watching. I had to ask this guy to come back. For one thing, you guys are wanting him to have a regular segment on the show, and so am I. Michael Maibach, hey, thank you so much for being with me on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, Donna. Good day.
Well, I told you you're the star of the show, not me. And so they like your star. They really do. A little for the new listeners, let's talk a little bit about you and your background and what got you to the point you're at right now. And thank you so much for being a patriot, by the way.
Okay, well, thank you. I I grew up in central Illinois, a small town, Peoria, Illinois, and went to college, put myself through college in Illinois, was hired by the Caterpillar Tractor Company, and I did government relations with them for 7 years. And then in 1983, I was hired by the four men who started the Intel Corporation to start their global government affairs team. So I did all of that international business diplomacy for about 35 years. I was president of the European American Business Council the last 10 years. And now I go around the country giving speeches about the Constitution, the Electoral College, and today's topic is George Washington's farewell address and why he published it in 1796 and the messages for us today. He had 7 warnings, Donna, 7, and we are not paying attention to most of them today, and we need to. So with that, at some point we can start a talk I'm going to give for your listeners.
Okay, you ready for the slides?
I am.
Okay, let's go.
Wonderful. So after 2 terms, Washington decided not to run for a 3rd term, and he was very purposeful about this. He wanted to publish in a newspaper. It was in Philadelphia, a newspaper. He published his farewell address, and he had 7 warnings, which we'll go through one by one today. Madison and then later Hamilton helped him draft the farewell address. It was published in the largest newspaper in Philadelphia, which was the largest city in the country. Number one story was he wouldn't seek re-election. He had been the only president of America, and he was offering Americans advice. So he was setting this precedent for no 3rd term. And of course, FDR broke that precedent, which then caused the constitutional amendment to limit presidents to 2 terms. He also was worried about the nation, the history of democracies, which we saw in the French Revolution, for example, and how that failed after a while, is that they didn't have a good history of remaining intact. And so he was worried that after 8 or 10 or 12 years, our republic would maybe fall apart and we'd go back to the kind of tyrannical power that was around the world. And Americans today are, of course, this was before the last election where I think people have settled down a bit, but Americans were worried about the future of the Constitution then, and we are today. Now, Washington chaired the Constitutional Convention. He didn't say anything during the active sessions. He would talk during meals with people. But the Constitution was only 8 years old when he wrote this. And he said, as a solicitude for your welfare and apprehension of dangers and warnings to a parting friend is sort of the theme of this speech. Remain united under the Constitution, geographically, politically remain united, and independent of foreign alliances. Remember, the British were up in Canada. The French were out west until, of course, the Louisiana Purchase in 1803 by Jefferson, and the Spanish were in the south, in Florida and in Latin America, South America, and Mexico. And remember, those were the three great European powers, and they were surrounding the young nation. So you have to keep that in mind. Number one, he says, I know you're from Maryland or from Vermont or whatever state you're from, but the name of American is now what we all go by, and it represents independence and liberty. And you love liberty, and I promise you, if you want to stay free in this dangerous world, we better stay united as one government, one people, and in the United States of America. Pains will be taken to divide us. The batteries of internal and external enemies. Think of the Civil War and all kinds of things we go through today where we have blue states and red states. Batteries, internal and external, will be constantly activated to divide the country. And he had in mind the Europeans, as I mentioned, that were surrounding us. So the palladium of our liberty is our unity as a country. Stay united, preserve it with jealous anxiety, he said. And then he goes through, which is very prescient for the Civil War. The North has this wonderful industrial intercourse with the South, which has agriculture primarily, as we know in those days. The East, in its intercourse with the West, finds valuable vent for commodities, and the West needs the supplies from the East as people move westward. And so he was trying to show that all 4 points of the compass were stronger together. And then he talks about the fact that we have a constitution by choice. In Federalist number 1, Hamilton writes, are we going to have a government by accident and force, or reason and choice? And the founders were very conscious that they created a government that they wrote down, and people in ratifying conventions in all 13 states chose this Constitution. So this has not been imposed on us. This is the Constitution that we chose. He said, as one of his warnings, that religion and morality are indispensable. Adams had written that this is a government only for a faithful people. And even though not everyone needs to be, I guess you would say, going to church and religious in the biblical sense, people have to understand the founders knew man's nature was broken. And because of that, we had to have a sense of humility toward ourselves and each other, and a willingness to work with each other. We can't have some people that are canceled, like cancel culture, and other people that see themselves as unvarnished. Everyone has to be humble and to understand that we all need to attain virtue and morality by working with each other. So this was a mindset. He then worried about debt. And of course, we have $37 trillion of debt today. And he said, cherish public credit. In other words, don't pile on debt, because it will be, as you can see, a weight around the dollar and around our financial security. He reminds us that Spain and England and France were surrounding us. And of course, Russia owned, believe it or not, Russia owned Alaska at the time. So the Russians were out there as well, another great empire. He reminds us in the farewell address that he signed treaties. The Jay Treaty abolished British forts out in the Western Territories, and that U.S. ship owners were compensated for interference they had from the British Navy. He also developed the idea of most favored nation trade status with the British, ratified 20 to 10 in the U.S. Senate. He also talked about Pinckney's Treaty, which was settled Western Florida boundary dispute with the Spanish, free navigation of the Mississippi River, which was negotiated with the French as well as the Spanish, and we received the right of deposit, which is we could use ports to ship our goods out of the country. Avoid foreign wars. Europe was full of wars, unfortunately, and always has been really until the Second World War sort of ended that, at least for now. Although now we have a Ukrainian war, which is the first time we've had a war since World War II of any great substance in Europe. But the French Revolution had come along just the year of the ratification of the Constitution, and the French were going through a terrible set of recriminations and executions. The guillotine was invented by the French during the French Revolution. They had so many people on their list to execute. Very different revolution than we had. There was a great debate about whether or not to enter into a war that the French and the British were having, which was typical between those two. And he proclaimed a proclamation of neutrality between the United States and the Europeans. Madison, at the request of Jefferson, who was a Francophile, he had been ambassador to France during the Constitutional Convention. Madison had published an op-ed essay called Helvidius, calling on the United States to enter war against the British and with the French. And so Hamilton was asked by Washington to publish an op-ed called Pacificus, in which he said we should not get in that war. And so this caused Washington to proclaim independence. And unfortunately, Jefferson, who had been Secretary of State, was for war with the British, and he leaves the cabinet. The French Revolution, of course, went from a king to a parliament to Napoleon to a king again, and it showed one of the reasons why the founders were worried about our democracy, our republic, really, was because this had been the cycle in the French and other instances in history. So he talks about frequent wars in Europe, and I'll just skip on here now. So cultivate peace, good faith, and justice toward all nations, and we need to be a nation of virtue. In summary, in no third term, stay united as a nation, cherish our Constitution, avoid regional and factional divisions here at home, avoid national debt, see religion and morality as one thing important to us all, avoid foreign wars and alliances, and these 7 practices ensure our liberty. And with that, I think you can close the slides, Donna. Thank you. And we can, if you want to discuss a little bit of that, but that's I think, a fair summary of his farewell address, which was read by most Americans.
I have a question for you, and this complies with all of our listeners and the folks who watch the show on an average basis. Most of the questions come from being in debt. And I know you mentioned that, and you know, we've had this whole saying around, you know, it takes money to make money. In other words, you have to spend money to make money. Do you agree entirely with that?
Oh my gosh, no. There's 2 types of debt. There's, you know, put this personally, people take on debt to buy a home, but they have to put money down, right? 20% typically, and then they pay it off in a certain schedule. And of course, if they don't pay it off, then the bank comes and says, you're going to default on your mortgage and we will take over your property and you'll lose your 20% and everything else that you invested. And that's why financing of homes works so well. I mean, I don't have any neighbors that are being foreclosed unless they have a great disaster in their life. But the other kind of debt is your credit card debt, which is you just keep getting more credit cards and having more and more debt, and it's out of control. So there's no way to get out of that kind of debt very easily unless you change jobs and or you inherit money or otherwise invent the integrated circuit or something. So debt is a real problem. The reason that we have, this is maybe a little far afield for this conversation, but the reason we have so much debt is because of two things that are combined. And one is the decrease in our birth rate, which is now 1.8%. Historically, it's been over 2. So we have what's called an inverted population pyramid. Historically, you have old people at the top and more young people down here. But if you invert this, you have more people staying alive longer and longer. I mean, my gosh, the average person died at 45 years of age in 1900. Today, it's 70 to 80 years of age, and yet my mother is one of 10 children, and so my sisters have a total of 5 between the two of them, and so that they haven't even have it. They just have half as many children as one of their grandmothers had. Combine that with the soaring cost of healthcare, which all these wonderful things that keep us alive so long. You have heart transplants and shoulder replacements and all kinds of things we didn't have before. And yet government pays for most of it. As you know, 75% of the revenues of hospitals come from government, the federal government. And so what we're doing is really printing money to take care of our health care. So our children and grandchildren will have to pay off the health care of current citizens. And so we have really a healthcare financial crisis. And that is spoken about by none of our leaders. Nobody who runs for president, either party, is saying we need to understand how to change our healthcare system. Instead, it's just healthcare is a right. Of course, it's not a right. There's no natural right or constitutional right to healthcare. It's not in the Bill of Rights. I'm sure of that. So that's a long answer, but
one thing.
Yeah.
But I wanted to mention one thing about healthcare. Okay, first of all, remember when Obamacare comes out, and you can't vote on it because we haven't all read it yet, but we're going to get it passed. That would be like a house without looking at it. Okay,
Yes.
Not even trying to get a lower price. That whole thing didn't make any sense whatsoever. Why was there not such an uprising from all sides of politicians about that?
Well, there was. It's called the Tea Party movement, and it was very substantial. But you have to understand that there's a fellow named Antonio Gramsci, who was Italian, who was a revolutionary in around the 1900s, early 1900s, a union organizer, who said, until you change a culture of Italy, we can't change the laws to become socialist. He was a socialist. And there was a guy named Rudi Deutsch in Germany, another radical, who said we have to have a march through the institutions to change the culture. So if you combine those two, and then you have the Frankfurt School in Germany, which was another leftist group that really moved themselves to Columbia University, where Mr. Obama went, for example, and Columbia's just finished a negotiation with the federal government over shenanigans at Columbia. By the time we get to Obamacare, it's just a long road, if you will. Well, the news media was taken over by the mindset of government is the answer to everything. Hollywood, the universities, for sure. My gosh, matter of fact, unfortunately, some of our universities are headquarters for Hamas demonstrators now. And we have all kinds of contretemps between the Trump administration and universities over the coddling of often violent and disruptive demonstrators, not just free speech, but their control of campuses. My point is that when Mr. Obama was pushing that through, he had all the institutions, whether it's Hollywood or news media, the radio and TV and universities, all cheering him on. And so the silent majority, as Mr. Nixon once said, is really something. So what's the reason that Mr. Trump is so controversial, I think that's a way to put it, is that he is really challenging these institutions in a way that hasn't been challenged for a long, long time. But unfortunately, the Congress should be embarrassed by what they did. They used a reconciliation provision to go around the filibuster rights in the Senate. It's the reason I had a couple of slides. I didn't mention the filibuster in that particular speech I just gave, but so we have a debt problem because we have a healthcare system that has no prices. And when you don't have prices, everything is free and therefore very expensive.
Well, it would appear to a commoner like me that was a setup, that it was done by design to bring the country back.
Yeah, there are no accidents. And ironically for Mr. Obama, the only thing of his only lasting thing, what I worked for the four men that started the Intel Corporation, and today they have 100,000 employees, but the company's having problems now. And I think it's because they lost the culture of that company. It had a wonderful culture, which was the reason they were so successful, I think. Well, we had a culture in America of governance where we had the loyal opposition, and we also treated people with respect. And the way they did that bill went around our cultural norms of our politics, and it really broke things. And Mr. Obama, maybe he's alive today, looking back on his presidency, what does he have to show for 8 years? Certainly not the healthcare system, which is no better off because of Obamacare. It just messed up the insurance market even more. The people that have lasting sustainability in their reputation are people like Lincoln, who saved the Union and ended slavery. Now that's a presidency. Only had 5 years. He was assassinated his first year of his second term. In Washington, we're talking about Washington today because the republic he and the founders built is sustained. But when you start to do end runs around the regular rules of Congress for something as big as changing the healthcare system, you can really reap the whirlwind in an unfortunate way.
What do you think happened when Roberts cast the deciding vote for Obamacare? Is that what changed?
Well, I think it was Mr. McCain. Is that what you're talking about?
No. Chief Justice Roberts.
Oh, you're talking about on the Supreme Court. Okay. Yes. McCain, cast a vote.
Yeah, he did too. Yeah.
Against getting rid of Obamacare.
Mm-hmm. What was going through their mind? You would have to, the brilliant minds. Okay. We're talking about two people here.
So
brilliant minds.
Chief Justice, yes. I find, as an outside observer, I find that this particular Chief Justice to be very political. And by that, I mean, he worries a great deal about the reputation of the court rather than the reputation of the law. And by that, I mean that I remember he said, well, there's a tax provision in the Obamacare, and therefore it's a tax law and it's constitutional. But the arguments were made that it just was an unconstitutional takeover of so much in our healthcare system. But he hung his hat, as they say, on the tax issue, which was the tail, not the dog. But I think he didn't want to be accused of taking away healthcare for Americans. I don't know. That's from an outside sort of. I wasn't in the deliberations in there, but the stuff you read from the opinion is that he hung it on the taxing power, and Obamacare was really much larger than passing a tax. But the Supreme Court, they have to get to majority by negotiating with each other. Maybe that's how he got to his ruling. I don't know. Those are private conversations.
Do you feel the Supreme Court basically is too political?
Well, it's an arm of the government. It is political, and there's nothing wrong with being political. What you want is wisdom. Okay, so I mean, Aaron Burr was political, and he had terrible wisdom. He He tried to become president, even though he was a vice presidential candidate, and Jefferson had to fight back against him. And Hamilton actually helped Jefferson. It's one of the reasons there was probably a duel between the two, and that's why. So you can be political and have wisdom and integrity, or you can be political and be ruthless, or be unwise. And unfortunately, in our Supreme Court, very often the important decisions are 6-3, and they're very predictable 6-3 because there is a mindset about the nature of our republic, and so different mindsets bring different legal decisions sometimes, even based on the same laws, of course.
Yeah, that's pretty apparent. I don't know, it didn't sit right with me, but I'm just this one lonely person out here. But actually, I'm not by myself in that. I'm not by myself in that opinion.
Yeah, and Justice Roberts. Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is not necessarily, maybe you chose the wrong word, not political, but what's popular these days. In other words,
popular.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the court is a political branch. So to say it's everything the Supreme Court decides is political, just like everything the president decides is political, and the Congress as well, because it comes from the word polity, which is, as Aristotle said, it's a community of people under the same rules, right? Mm-hmm. And we have a constitution, and the French have they're on their 5th constitution, by the way. We're on our 2nd. So everything is political, but the question is it principled? In other words, what are the principles? What is the wisdom that's being exercised? The insights about human nature, and what is principled? And sometimes being principled is to be unpopular. And I don't think the Supreme Court majority for which Roberts was a part wanted to say to people, well, the Congress just gave you extra health care benefits, and now the court will take those away. But the founders would have said, we can't believe the federal government is in the healthcare business. If Federalist 45, Madison says, it's an important Federalist paper for federalism. Madison says, the federal government will look outward toward other nations. So you're talking about armies, national defense, immigration, borders, the law of the sea, etc. And the state governments, there were 13 at the time, will look inward toward the people and their welfare. So things like schools and healthcare and other things were really meant for state governments to do. And the nice thing about our federalism is, we have 50 different states with 50 different tax policies, school choice policies, abortion policies, on and on and on. But we have just one national healthcare policy. And whenever we have something national like that, it's very brittle. And one size fits all is very uncomfortable for those people that are too big or too small for the outfit, right? So disaggregating healthcare might be a good thing to discuss, but boy, that's a topic for a different talk.
It's a booger. That would take about 2 hours. We don't have enough time.
Well, it would take. It's just, we have a real dilemma. There are things we could talk about in another. I give a talk called "The Age of Biogenetics. Will it undermine Western democracy and prosperity?" Having to do with this population pyramids and the cost of healthcare, and the fact that healthcare is a right now, which is a very expensive right to have.
Yeah, it most certainly is. Let's go into a commercial break. Can you believe half the show is already over? We'll be right back in just a few. Queen City Used Car Sales has been serving drivers in the Northeast Alabama area for years with a quality selection of late model used cars, SUVs, and pickup trucks. On top of our extensive selection and competitive prices, we offer professional auto financing services for used car buyers of all credit levels. Whether you've just begun your search or you're ready to secure your next vehicle, at Twin City Used Car Sales, you will drive away with the vehicle of your dreams. The sales and finance staff at Twin City Used Car Sales looks forward to serving you, and you can apply for financing online before your visit to our used dealership in Gadsden, Alabama. Check us out on the web at twincityusedcars.com or go by our location at 901 First Avenue, Gadsden, Alabama. We sincerely look forward to serving you. At Lamone's Mexican Restaurant, located in Henniger, Alabama, and voted Best Mexican Restaurant of the Cobb County, Alabama 2020, we're here to serve you with authentic Mexican cuisine. Order easily online by going to lamonsmex.com or call 256-657-3999 to place your order. We're open Sunday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Friday and Saturday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Whether you're celebrating a cozy date night for two or a celebration for a crowd, at Lamone's you'll love our atmosphere and friendly servers. Thank you for dining with Lamone's Mexican Restaurant. At Liberty Bank, we're all about community, whether it's to help with a charity fundraiser or help families in need. Toys at Christmas or a local football team, we're here for you. You see, we realize the importance of family. Sometimes it's to build a new home or necessary home repairs. We're here for you. If you like the feel of a small town bank with all the conveniences of a big city bank, we're here to serve you. You will find us at any of our convenient locations in DeKalb, Marshall, Etowah, and Blount counties in North Alabama. You can call and speak with any of our friendly staff at 256-659-2175 or check us out on the web at libertybankal.com. And thank you for your support of our community. Member FDIC Equal Housing Lender.
Are you ready?
We all wonder what tomorrow will bring, but the future lays itself at the feet of the prepared and surrenders to the will of the persistent. It's not easy, but today shapes you so you can shape tomorrow. With Northeast Alabama Community College, when the future asks if you're ready, you can answer
yes.
Begin your future at Northeast Alabama Community College.
We are back. My name is Donna, and I am your host of Donna's Edge television talk show, Where Truth Matters. Thank you so much for watching every day, Monday through Friday, beginning at 2 p.m., and that's on the Eastern Time Zone, as I get to ride home with you in the afternoon. If you're at work right now, I don't want you to be fired because you're watching the show, so you can always go back and go to the YouTube channel. You can also find us on Facebook, facebook.com/DFeasel, and find it that way. And please share. We would love you to do that and just get that word out. We want the truth out there. That's why we have Michael with us right now. Michael, I wanted to talk with you, and this is one of the points that you made for Washington, and that's human nature. Okay, so jealousy has been going on since the beginning of time. Cain and Abel, right. The whole works.
Right.
We had to know, and this is from common sense also. Very, very, very well wise man was Washington, but he also had common horse sense. And what I mean by that is jealousy can be, and we've seen it happen for centuries, okay, where someone gets jealous and down goes a country. You know, things can happen to the country because of jealousy. Mm-hmm. What do you think he meant by that?
So I'm trying to understand who said that?
Well, actually, I was talking about staying united. And then
you're talking about Washington.
Washington. Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot of jealousy going on. I mean, we're a united nation, and we're almost 50-50, if you want to believe that.
Yeah, right.
The left and the right. And we're at a point right now.
Mm-hmm. So
did you foresaw that?
So it's really, you're asking a metaphysical question. The division right now we have is really the division we see between the difference between the American Revolution and the French Revolution. Matter of fact, Edmund Burke wrote about the difference between those two, and so did John Quincy Adams, wrote a book about the difference between the American and French Revolution. The American Revolution began with the thought that we wanted to preserve our faith, our religious freedom, and that we were in harmony with the Judeo-Christian Bible. And there was a lot of biblical references in the founders' writing, their works. The fact that we have a written constitution like we have a written 10 Commandments is sort of a parallel there. The French Revolution really threw out all the wisdom of the ages. They killed the king, who was the head of the church, and they killed priests, and they killed all their opposition. There was no forgiveness. There was no redemption. There was absolute power, and it appealed to the worst instincts of the men and women of France at the time. And because of that, they created a democracy which imploded. Our country, in the end, is founded on the Judeo-Christian mindset about people, and that is that people have to be charitable toward each other. They have to be humble, and they have to be forgiving because they want to be forgiven themselves. It's sort of a wonderful way to live and have a society. When we have people that go against nature, what we call natural law, we have problems in America. The most important thing that's separating us right now, in a way, is human anthropology. What is the nature of the human person? Can a man become a woman? Can three people get married? And just all kinds of things that are really difficult to even talk about sometimes with our neighbors. The founders never would have thought that we would have a pill that would create an abortion, but we do. And so these kind of, what is the nature of the human existence? And those things, Washington didn't talk about in the farewell address because he didn't anticipate they would come along. But he did worry that we got divided on things, and right now we're divided on things in a fundamental way. I really think it's because on the left, and that, I'm not saying Democrats, because Democrats are all kinds of people, but on the left, the far left, they're in their mindset, there are victims and victimizers in the world. And that is a very unforgiving world when half the people are seen as victims and half as victimizers. So you have a person that perpetrate. We just had a person convicted of beating up an 80-year-old man who was peacefully demonstrating in an abortion clinic, and the judge gave him no jail time because, he's probably a victim of something in society, and therefore there is no responsibility for his actions in a serious way. So when we start to see people as victims or victimizers, rather than each individual is responsible for their own actions and their own behavior, for better or for worse, people should be recognized for their successes, and if they perpetrate a crime, they should be responsible for it. But when we start to think that, some people they broke the law, but their parents didn't love them or some other reason, then there is no accountability. Then people feel there's no justice.
I feel there's no justice. And I wanted to say this. Okay, I love chocolate. Okay, if I eat a pound of chocolate, I'm probably going to gain a pound of more than that. That's my fault, because I did that, and I've got to face that consequence.
Yeah,
I have to be facing consequences.
Right. Yeah. It's
I can't sue the candy manufacturing company because I put it in my own mouth and ate it.
Yeah. So we all have to be responsible. This is, just ask any parents about their children, and what they're doing almost every day is saying yes and no. And when they say no, it's, don't do that. And if they do it, then they're responsible somehow, which is, okay, you're gonna go to bed early, or you're not going to get to play with your toy tractors or whatever. I mean, there are rewards, and there are losses of opportunities for people when they break the rules. Being accountable is fundamental to an orderly society, so I don't know where we should go from here on this one, but it's it's.
But the whole thing is okay. You can run a nation based on emotion, or you can run a nation based on wisdom.
Right.
It feels like you have two different battles.
Right. And who is responsible for? We've gone through in the last, I guess, 10, 15 years, quite a debate nationally about parents and parental rights. And Illinois just passed a law that all grade school kids are now going to be given a mental health test. And, those schools are in the business of reading, writing, arithmetic, and not sort of second guessing parents' judgment on whether or not their children are mentally and, let's say, spiritually happy and healthy. And so, of course, now there's a debate: can parents opt out of that law, which they're going to be able to do? But my gosh, the schools are really not made to start determining mental health of all the students, and who gets branded as mentally ill when you're in the fourth grade. half of my classmates were characters when I was growing up. We all had personalities. We were trying to figure out how to be a person, and and acting out or whatever. I mean, my friend and I were asked to shovel snow during recess between the church and the school. And then we just kept shoveling right down the street and did everybody's sidewalk until the priest finally found us 2 hours later. So we were delinquent, but we were having so much fun shoveling everybody's sidewalk in the snowstorm. So that's what kids do. And, to start having school systems in a systematic way make judgments on the mental health rather than have parents in charge. It's just one more step of the state power. Most people don't know, but when the Soviet Union became the Soviet Union, Russia became Soviet Union with the revolution of 1917, the first thing they did was outlaw the institution of marriage. They saw parents as coming between the state and children. And that was very, very, very unpopular. And they very quickly went back to allowing for marriage. But the point is that if you read Marx and Engels and others, they see parents as a problem rather than the solution. I mean, the best thing that can happen, a great luxury today is for a child to have a father and a mother at home. Half the kids in America don't have a father at home, and that's a real problem, and needs to be addressed, socially, and not through government.
Yeah, and the government definitely does have too much power. I have a friend who had a teenage daughter who would just run away. She got into drugs, and the dad wasn't at home, that kind of thing. But every time my friend would try to correct her daughter, the daughter would come back at, "I'm going to call DHR on you."
Oh, geez.
So what I said, I'd let her call DHR. I'd give her a reason to call DHR. So she was afraid because, see, we had heard of other women out in the community who tried to protect kids and would say, "No, you can't do this. No, you can't do that." Be a parent And so she was afraid that would happen. She said, I can't correct Tammy. And I said, I think you got to correct Tammy. You have to. So that she said that in my face every single time. But, it comes to a matter of parenting too. And emotions is, I'm not saying don't have emotion, because we all do. I'm a woman with emotions. But what I mean is, when you govern by emotion, or you try to let someone has been mistreated, well, what about the person who's been murdered? I would say not only have they been mistreated, but their family has been mistreated.
Right. Right. I think one way to look at it is the first level of government. When you ask a high school student, what are the levels of government, they'll say federal, state, and local. And the answer is federal, state, and local, family. The first level of government is the family. This is where little children learn there is a government, and it's called my parents. And they are setting down the rules, and they're showing me how to be a good person. So when I enter on my own, when I'm 18 years of age, the civil society, I've been taught by my parents how to act within civil society. And our prisons, in a part, are testimonials to the breakdown of successful families in teaching people how to behave in civil society. So the best thing you can do for civil peace, for a strong society, is have a strong family network. And of course, in every state in America, there is a family foundation of some type. Here in Virginia, it's the Family Foundation of Virginia, where I live. And they focus on state and local policies that are for the family and for parents, as opposed to taking away the responsibilities of family and parents. And I'm sure in Alabama, you've got some sort of a family foundation, and every state does. And that's very good for us to have people watching to see our legislature protecting families rather than managing families in a way that's unwise.
I really wish some of the grandparents from maybe 4 decades ago would have written books about family life. I mean, I'm just going to take healthy respect for my grandmothers. I love them, but I knew how far I could go. Of them. And I never read books because my friends would say, do your grandparents spank you? And I'd say, they don't have to. I mean, I know they could. So, but it's respect. And do you feel that Washington was bringing that into focus as well, as far as people not having respect for the government, not having respect for the parents, grandparents, whatever, church?
I think in those days, there was no confusion about who was in charge of families. There were no public schools when Washington was alive. That comes later. With land grant colleges and all the rest, it's earlier than Lincoln. But people were home, everybody was homeschooled. And the only reason Americans were so literate, because we had like 90% literacy in America during the founding, was because of the Bible. Everybody was churched. And so you have to read the Bible. And so kids were taught how to read because they had to read their Bible. And there was a study done in about 1990 they studied national merit scholars. These are the top high school students. I believe they call them national merit scholars. We had one in my high school who was a very bright math student. They tried to find out what made them possible. Were they children of immigrants? Were their parents PhDs? Did they live in a city or a rural area? Were they religious or not religious? And all these different variables. Why are these kids national merit scholars, the best students in the country? The only thing they found in common was that they all had dinner with their families every night. And that makes all the difference in the world. If people in America want to improve family life, they put away the television and all the devices, no cell phones at dinner, just talk to each other every night. My father came from very strict Christian family, and his father read from the Bible every dinner before they talked. That was the first form of conversation was, and I have that Bible. My father gave me that Bible. And so family is the first level of government and the foundation of a successful society. And there is no substitute. It takes a village for some things, but for raising children without a father and a mother, you're at a disadvantage. And we really want to get people to respect the life of family. And it is, you want to be on your kids to be a road of success, have dinner with them every night.
Totally agree. And both parents need to agree as well. I have a cousin who committed suicide at age 15. And the parents were together, but now they argued constantly and they used the kids. And she was a very confused girl. I thought she was just, teenagers all act weird anyway. And so then it started making sense because I remember one time she was 14 and wanted to go to this place that looked like a teenager shouldn't be at. And you could pass by there and you would see older men gawking at the younger girls walking in. Well, the girl wanted to go, and so the mother said no. And then the dad was in the next room. She went and asked him. And he looked at the mother and said, yeah, you can go, like that. So when my husband and I were married, we made this very clear point that when we were married with kids, that if one of us said the kids couldn't do anything, whether you agreed or not, you had to go along with it. Mm-hmm. And so my son tried that once, and he came to me, and he was 14, and he wanted to do something, and I said, no, you're too young, you can't go. And so, and I was very plain about that. I didn't make a question in the mind. I said no. Well, he knew I meant no. So he goes to Phil, and he asks Phil, and Phil said, son, what'd your mother say? And he said, well, she said no. And he said, well, then the answer is no. They didn't do that anymore. So we just had that. And I would do the same thing. It was just because I saw what happened. I saw that if parents can't somehow agree on things and be in control of the child, that's what happens.
Right. When I was a senior in high school, we had lunch with the priest of my high school. I went to a Catholic high school. We had Father Albert Hallen was his name. We used to have lunch with him often on Fridays. And the last Friday of high school, there were about 7 or 8 of us that did this with him. And he said, now you young men are going to go off and get married. What's the number one thing you can do for your children if you have children? We started guessing. Well, send them to college, make them play sports. Don't fight with each other. We're trying to guess. And he said, the number one thing that you can do for your children is to love their mother. 2 things will happen. One is the children will see what love looks like, and they will also feel secure, because no matter what is happening around the world, and the world is a very difficult place at all times, not just now, but it always has been difficult. They will feel secure that if nothing else, I have a father and a mother who love each other, love us, and they will stick together, and we'll get through this with them. They're the captains of our ship, if you will. And that's what I'm talking about when it comes to dinners, for example, is just mom and dad say, we're having dinner together, and there is no email, there is no text, there is no television, there's only us. And that would be a good way to live for parents and for children.
And we're going back to Washington's address again. And he mentioned jealous anxiety, and he also mentioned unity.
Yeah.
And we have unity in this country.
Right. Well, we're always divided. It's the way of the war. The great thing about the founders, what we have in our Constitution is triangles of liberty, I call them. The House and the Senate, the Congress, the courts, and the executive branch. And the great thing about America, and one of the reasons why we stay together, is that the opposition, what I call the loyal opposition, always has a place to go. So right now, the Democratic Party doesn't have the Congress, they don't have the White House, and they don't have the Supreme Court because their appointees are not in control there. But what are they doing? They're filing all kinds of lawsuits, and they're going through all these different district courts with all these different rulings, et cetera. And what is the other thing is that they're focused on, in a year and a half, we'll have U.S. House elections and U.S. Senate elections, and maybe they'll take the House back or the Senate back. And so our system it's not an absolute, okay, you're powerless, but rather you can bring lawsuits, you can have filibusters. It takes 60, not 51 votes to pass something in the U.S. Senate. That's why I had a couple of slides. I didn't really talk about them, but the filibuster requires that people cooperate in the Senate to at least 60 votes for most things. That's why when you brought up Obamacare, they avoided the filibuster because that never would have passed with 60 votes. It passed with 51 votes. And so our system is built so that we have some civility in it and have a place for the loyal opposition to go until the next election. And we've had since 1904, 14 Republican and 14 Democrat presidents. In 125 years, we've had equal number of the two-party presidents. So if you think American democracy is pro-Democrat or pro-Republican, just wait for the next election and the pendulum will swing again. The American people have this wonderful sense in their gut of how to keep things, sort of on an even keel pretty much. And then when you get way over to the one side, like George McGovern, you win one state. I think Ronald Reagan won 49 states in 1984. So I think that's right. And maybe McGovern ran against Nixon. Sorry, I got the wrong election there. But that was the point is when you get too far over one point or the other, you lose elections. And so the pendulum will swing and we'll get to a different sort of balance. And that's the Constitution is just quite a mechanism. It's, the founders lived in the age of science. Darwinian science was the generation just before. The Constitution is full of scientific balances between the branches. And it takes 38 states to amend the Constitution, and it takes 60 votes to pass something in the Senate. And all these checks and balances, we call them, what Aristotle called the mixed regime, the checks and balances. This is what keeps us free, not the Bill of Rights. It's the checks and balances that keep us free because nobody has absolute power. Everybody is sharing power with others.
Totally agree. And I got to say this is the wonderful thing about being 66 years old on Earth. Okay, you actually don't have all the wisdom in the world, or you do, but I don't. But I have lived a little bit. And what happens is if there's something going on that I don't agree with, I'll just wait my turn. Okay, because I was not happy with the Biden presidency. So now it's my turn. Now there will be another person coming in like him, I'm pretty sure. Mm-hmm. It's the nature of it all. It will happen. I will just keep my opinions to myself and start working on my own home. Just make that work. Okay, now Michael, you are also a speaker. So how can folks get in contact with you?
Well, my email is right there on the screen, mcm@maibach.us. I work at Save Our States and the American Constitutional Rights Union. I'm a fellow in both of those places. They just contact me and ask for a speech. I typically don't charge for speeches and have a travel budget. So I try to, I've been to over 40 universities. I speak at Rotary clubs and Republican and Democratic clubs, civic groups, high schools, all kinds of venues. Almost 200 speeches now around the country, mostly about the Electoral College. But I give this speech on Washington's farewell address and some other talks as well. So happy to visit a community near you.
Well, you know something? Thank you so much for what you do. It's
Thank you. Appreciate it.
well received. Absolutely. And thank you guys so much for watching Donna's Edge television talk show, where truth matters. We love having great guests like Michael on the show with us. And you are the reason we do what we do. Continue sending emails, Donna@donnasedge.com. That's Donna@donnasedge.com. And again, thank you so much for watching.
Thank you, Donna.